Welcome to Pieces for My Puzzle. I am your host, Nikki Ship, and I'm excited to be sharing with you my life with a son on the spectrum. This podcast is for anyone who is looking for quick tips and perspective, but most of all, for hope and inspiration. So sit back, relax, and let's put the pieces together. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Pieces for My Puzzle. I'm your puzzle master, Nikki Ship. Thanks so much for joining us today. Last week, we spoke about the myths of ABA therapy. So if you didn't get a chance to listen to that episode, please tune into that one. It was a really good episode. This week, we're going to talk about significant strengths that people on the spectrum have. In a previous episode recently that I just did called Finding Joy in Everyday Life, I talked about appreciating Drayson for all of his strengths. And I wanted to highlight some of the most common ones to you today because this is one thing that we can kind of all relate to if you know somebody that's on the spectrum. So it's all how you look at things. So first of all, when I talk about some of these super strengths, you might have heard some of these descriptions before, and sometimes they can be viewed as negative or have a negative connotation to them. So I invite you to look at things differently if you do tend to notice that you feel that way. Maybe try taking a different perspective and see if it helps you. But strength number one is that they hyperfixate. And we as parents might say that they obsess at things. I've said that before, that Drayson's obsessed with trains. And so I've noticed that as I say that, sometimes it can be taken negatively. So rather than look at it as a problem, create opportunities to expand on that subject with your child. For example, like I said, Drayson loves trains or cars, and we started small by talking to him about the wheels or the color or the shape and trying to find ways to connect with him that way, and then also expanding upon that. So that started at a very young age with Drayson. He was 3 when we started really noticing his obsession with trains, and it has now evolved. So it's now not just about the size, the shape, or the color. It's we build tracks all over this one area bedroom that we have, and we talk about which ways should the track go, left or right, should we add now we're adding scenery to the train tracks. And so it's really helped us to open up this side of imagination too with Drayson when we play with trains. And it's also a great way to become an expert in something, right? So now we're learning about steam engine trains versus like diesel trains. And so you're able to expand on all of those subjects, and eventually they're going to become, Drayson's probably an expert in trains and all things trains right now. Super strength number 2 is pure and unfiltered honesty. Gotta love this one. Sometimes too unfiltered, but it's interesting to me because I have a deep appreciation for it, but sometimes it can be deemed as inappropriate, right? Societal norms. Sometimes it looks as if it's inappropriate, but it's actually quite an admirable quality, and they just call it how they see it. And I appreciate that because sometimes I think that Drayson just says what I'm thinking, but I just don't. I have the filter not to say it, and he doesn't. So pure and unfiltered honesty. If you've ever had a conversation with someone on the spectrum, I'm pretty sure you know what I'm talking about. Super strength number 3 is they communicate differently. And you may find a different language with them, so to speak. And I love this because it also helps me to think differently. In a previous podcast episode that I did with my guest speaker, Brenda Del Monte, she wrote a book called I See You in There. And I remember she said something very plainly to me. She said to me that language doesn't have to be speech. And that was so profound to me when she said it, because I think about over the years how much I've communicated with Drayson without using speech. So remember that even though that their communication is differently, it might open up a different level or a different way of communicating that you never thought could happen. And I think that that's just absolutely amazing. Super strength number 4 is that there are no gray areas, which is true. Drayson sees very black and white. Most think in absolutes, and they like the structure of rules. So the more structure that you can give, the better. They very much like that, or they like a regimen to something. The way that they might love an activity or a toy or a person could make them excellent later in the future in a professional field. If you really think about it as an advocate or maybe as a lawyer or something in the realm of mechanics, but having that type of structure can potentially really help them later on in life in a professional career of some sort. So being neurodivergent is with an extreme passion is not necessarily a bad thing. It could really fuel their success later on in life. Super strength number 5, their attention to detail. I know I've kind of mentioned this a little bit earlier as well, but this one always surprises me with Drayson. And it's just because the details could be a great way to engage with him, but the details that I'm looking at aren't necessarily the details that he's looking at. And he loves to line things up. And the reason that he lines things up could be completely different compared to why I think he's lining them up. So it could be due to size or shape or color or any of those things. So it's interesting when you start to communicate with them and ask them what they see or how they see something. And it's usually a detail that most people would miss. And I think that that's interesting that sometimes the way we look at things, they see from a completely different perspective. So that's absolutely a superpower, in my opinion. At the end of every episode, we want to do a story highlight or ask a question to the audience. So I'm going to ask a question to you guys today, and that is, what is your child's superpower? What's their super strength? Do they hyperfixate on something? Do they communicate differently with you? Are they obsessed or have a passion for a certain subject that you could see them doing later on in the future? Feel free to write in the show at info@piecesformypuzzle.com. We would love to hear the answers and responses to those questions. And if we do read your story on the show, we're going to go ahead and also send you a little gift as a thank you for doing so. So that's it for today. Please like and follow us on Facebook and Instagram. And if you haven't subscribed already to our YouTube channel, please do at Pieces for My Puzzle. If you like what you're hearing, please spread the word to others in the community and let them know that we're here to offer help and provide resources to the autism community. And if you like what you're hearing, please give us a good rating on your preferred podcast platform of choice. Until next time, keep working on your puzzle, and remember, you don't have to have it all solved in a day. Take care.